So this video is going to be an in-depth look at the not too newly released, but the newest version of Bachmann's GS4, and this is 4449. I had one of these before, but it was in an earlier scheme, and it was the DCC ready version, and it ended up getting economy in it, which I did in a video probably about 2.5 years ago. But these have been out since last summer. I ended up getting rid of my last one because I wanted to get either a Broadway or an MTH version of this engine, which has not proven easy to do, and most of them now are going in excess of $500 on eBay. So until I can find one that's reasonably priced, or MTH reruns theirs, that's just probably just what I'm going to use for the time being to have an example of 4449. So just taking a look here, haven't really looked over this engine too much just yet, but we're going to go over a lot of things in detail. So first off, some of the things that come with it in the box here. Has your typical Bachmann packaging, nothing really different there. Some of the things and paperwork that you get with it. A little thing here saying about the wire harness, which doesn't really matter. You can run this on very tight radius. Got your exploded parts diagram. One thing I do find a little interesting is they give you this thing here, which they call a quick start guide, but it doesn't actually have any CVs in it whatsoever. So for something like changing the whistle, which is wrong out of the box, it actually has an ATSF 6 chime as the default whistle. There are 3 selectable ones. The second one, or CV1, actually I'm sorry, it's CV15 with a value of 1, is actually the correct 4449 horn. And there's many other things that you can set up within there. It's not quite as in-depth as an actual Econami or a Tsunami 2 decoder, but I will adjust some of those things as we go along. So far, the only CV adjustments that I've made is CV128, which is the master volume. I kicked that up to 255, which is maximum. And also, like I said, the whistle selection. So go ahead and fire it up here. Now, one thing on here that is kind of grossly incorrect is the top part here is actually supposed to have a gyro light, and they actually have it set up kind of like a dual beam headlight, and then the bottom is actually supposed to be the headlight, but it's actually just one bulb, and it kind of just bleeds the light into both of them. Also, if you're looking in directly over top, you can actually see the light bulb through the smokestack, so that looks kind of bad. We'll go through some of the sounds here. Your typical bell. It's actually not too bad of a whistle for it. However, the tender is not correctly baffled, and that can be greatly improved with some work in the tender and possibly swapping out the speaker to something better also. We'll go ahead and back it up here. Also, it doesn't properly have the cylinder cocks on. That is something that can be turned on in the CVs, though. It is reasonably smooth. There's quite a bit of noise. I'll just mute the sound and you can just listen to the drive mechanism. And we'll go ahead and kick it up to full speed. And we'll see what result that yields. Doesn't look very fast. Yeah, it's not very fast. We'll give it another pass. Nope, still not any faster, but you notice how loud the thing is, and I don't even have the sound on. It's just extremely loud. So I don't know if there's a lubrication issue there. I did have this issue with my last GS4 also. So next we're going to take a look at some of the details that are kind of not so good, and also how they pertain to this model. So a couple of things here on the outside. Having an awful time with my tripod here. So first of all, and this was kind of pointed out to me by someone else, the lower part here is actually supposed to be flush, or actually just a tad shorter than the top headlight, and it's actually longer on the bottom, which is wrong. Also, this piece right here is supposed to be painted kind of a gunmetal or dark metal color, not a shiny gloss black like the rest of the engine. Also, the wheels, to match present day version of this, should be blacked out, no white walls. Also, the paint, as you get closer in here, the numbers here, zoom in there we go. The numbers and also the writing along the tender is kind of like a silver color, and it actually should be in white. Also, the red that's on here, it looks a little brighter here because we actually are in daylight, but it's actually way too dark of a red. It should be more of a brighter red. Also, the railings on the tender here, these especially, those should not be like a chrome color. Those should be black, matching the actual tender. Also, the ladder here, that should all be black, not just molded into the body and painted the same color. That I can probably fix, as well as the railings, and of course the wheels. That shouldn't be too hard of a fix there. And of course it has the Bachmann ugly plastic couplers on there. So we'll go ahead and shut it off here. A couple other things I want to point out, just kind of with the fit and lack of finish of the engine, I guess you could say. One sort of improvement they did make from the last one is they now have a single tender plug, which interestingly enough is 8 pins. I'm not sure why, because there'd only really be 6 required to actually run what's in the locomotive, which would be your 2 rail pickups, and then also the 2 wires for the motor, and then the 2 wires for the headlight. So not sure why they have 2 extra motor leads, or just 2 extra leads run into the engine. That's fine, because I'm actually going to use those, because I actually want to make this top one here into a functional, it's called a gyro light, that's supposed to be on there. Also, I mean, just, ugh, what is that? Like, it just, ugh. So, I mean, I don't know if there's a way I can tighten some of that up, maybe put in a couple little gaskets or something. That just reeks of cheapness. Continuing on here, a couple other things here. This piece here, this would be like kind of like the firebox grate. It's like a gloss gray. That should not be it. That should be a metallic color. I can probably fix the paint there with little issue. Also, the number boards have no numbers on them, and the builder's plate is simply a gold diamond. They didn't bother to actually write anything in there, which, interestingly enough, on the other version of this engine from the same run, the American Freedom Train version, which is the red, white, and blue one that represents the 1970s era excursion train, they actually did put all that detail up front, and they actually did paint this front boiler different color. So I'm not sure why they made the lack of effort on this one, even though it's the more popular scheme of the two. Again, I shouldn't have very much trouble on the wheels. One thing that is correct, and I'm not sure if it shows up, is they have these little stars in the center, which is actually correct. Also, the drawbar here, I would much prefer if the tender sat in closer to the engine a little bit. They put it out so far just because it can negotiate, you know, like 18-inch curves, which I'd sooner have it just look a little nicer and not be able to negotiate those tighter curves. But it's a low-priced engine, so they assume that a lot of people are probably running it on 18 radius. Closed off cab, there's no like little grate plate or walkway between them, so I mean it kind of just rides off far like that. It doesn't look as nice, so maybe I can look into possibly fabricating something out of styrene there. And the tender here, it is obviously sound already, so that should be pretty easy to... I think I'm going to go with a different brand of decoder just because I want those two different lighting effects up front, and there's just not another output that's in here since this isn't a real version of Tsunami or Economy. It doesn't have the extra lighting outputs, so that's just something I'm going to have to either go to... It's looking like at this point I'm either going to put regular Economy in it or TCS WOW. That's what I have on hand. I do also have some lock sound decoders as well. Maybe I'll take a look into putting that in also. So that is going to be it for this part of it, which is kind of more of an overview of the engine. In part 2, I'm actually going to be tearing this down, and we're going to start to modify all these little bits and pieces to closer match what actually 4449 looks like present day. So that is it for this one, so stay tuned for part 2. Maybe a little bit here because I got some other stuff on my workbench that I need to clear out of the way before I can tear this thing apart.